Hi guys, so welcome to our next lesson on the Holocaust and genocide. Today what we're going to be looking at is life and death in the concentration and extermination camps of Nazi Germany. Um, just to be clear, this is a very much an overview kind of lesson. We're going to be covering a huge amount of material in a very short space of time, so we're not going to have the opportunity to go into this in a huge amount of detail. I definitely encourage you to go and do a bit more research around this. If you look at the booklet that I have sent out to you and look at the sources at the end, there's a lot of great sources there for where you'll find more information. Today I'm just going to be giving a very general overview, and this is purely down to time constraints and how much time we have left in the year at the moment. So don't feel that this is this is an overly detailed account. This is very much just a brief overview of what was happening in the camps, and there's a huge amount of information out there for people who are interested in finding out, and it's a very important thing that people should understand. So I definitely encourage you to go and do a bit more research on top of this. So just to get started, in last week we looked at the idea of what genocide was. We looked at a few different examples of genocide, and then we looked at uh, the events and issues that led to the Holocaust being able to happen in the 1930s. So I want you to just think back about what we discussed in our last lesson about the causes or the events that led to the Holocaust being able to happen. And tell me, what were some of the events that occurred in the 1930s which helped to dehumanize the Jewish people in Nazi territories? So I'll give you a minute there to think about it. Some of the things you might come up with would be that you have the example of the star that the Jewish people were forced to wear being used to show them as different, show them as an other to the to the most people around them. We talked about the ghettos and how the Jewish community was separated from society and separated from the community, again to show them as someone different, so that the government and the people um, forcing through this anti-Semitic beliefs were able to say, "Oh, look at the people; they are different to us; they are separated." We looked at the number of crimes being blamed on the Jewish people. We looked at the propaganda within the education system, particularly. There's lots and lots of stuff going on here. That propaganda and that those physical events, things like Kristallnacht and the ghettos, used to try and dehumanize the Jewish people, so that when the Nazis came to putting in place their final solution, the general populace wouldn't be concerned about what was happening to the Jewish people as much, because they would have had not be viewing them in a morally correct way. So objectives today is just to understand the main processes involved in the Holocaust in terms of how the people were transported and how the concentration and extermination camps worked, and be aware of some of the conditions of life and death in the camps. Now, the events, as I've already said, the events in the camps, the history of the camps is incredibly traumatic. It's incredibly difficult at times to hear about, and the experiences that have come from people who survived are definitely something that I would encourage you to look into. I'm taking very much just a factual, straight historical view for today, just going through the very basics. So, task two is going to be looking at these questions on the board, which I'm going to discuss through in a moment. Most of this information is also in the booklet, so of course I'm advising you to read the booklet as well. So I want to know how were Jewish people transported to camps? What were they told would be happening in the camps? What does Arbeit macht frei mean? And I apologise for my pronunciation, I could be very wrong. And what was the function of the doctors at the entrances to the camps? So last time where we stopped was we were looking at how the Jewish people had been sent to ghettos in a number of in Nazi territories. So most of the major cities had established Nazi ghettos, such as Warsaw, for example, with a ghetto of about 500,000 people living in a small area. These ghettos, we said, were very small. They were overcrowded. They lent themselves to spread of diseases, very cramped conditions, very difficult life within them. The next step was, after the final solution was decided on at the Wannsee conference, was to try and start transporting these people to concentration camps. Now, we know that concentration camps had existed before, throughout Nazi times. Okay, we looked at Dachau being set up in the very early 1930s, and mainly used for criminals or political opponents. So, in terms of how these were sold to the people of the territories, basically they were set up as, the idea was, the people were told these were work camps, and Jewish people were being sent there in order to teach them to be better people and teach them how to contribute to society and to remove them as a bad influence from society in general. People were not told that when the concentration camps were set up that these were being used to exterminate the Jewish population. That was not what the propaganda was being sent out. This is not what people were being openly told. Now, whether people became later aware of what was happening to some extent is a different matter. Okay, it's a very complex matter. But what we need to know is that when the concentration camps were first set up, basically the general population were told that these were work camps where Jewish people would be sent in order to teach them how to be better members of society and to separate them as a bad, because they were believed to be a bad influence. So the main form of transport to the camps was by train, and you can see here in the picture that's on the screen that these were very much treating the Jewish people like animals. So these are cattle carts, these trains. They're big, just empty sheds essentially. And as you can see, all of these people are being shoved into a very small amount of space, and they're very much overcrowded onto these trains. People could spend days on these trains, multiple days, sitting in these dark, shut-off containers with absolutely no comforts. To be, totally overcrowded, pushed up against people. Definitely nothing such as a chair. Not even basic sanitary needs being met. So not even a toilet. People, corners or holes in the floor being assigned to sanitary needs. So very much a dehumanized way to transport people. That's absolutely horrific experience for anyone who was involved. The reason for this would be that, first of all, the Jewish people were being treated as if they were not humans. This was a very economic way to transport the people, and these carts were used as a way to kind of hide the process of this terrible event from the general public. They didn't want the public seeing what was inside the carts. Now, whether the public knew or not is a different matter, and it can be hard to believe that people weren't aware of some of what was going on. But this was allowing people to blind themselves to the true truth of the events. Okay? So huge numbers of people were forced onto these trains, transported huge distances, often not to even the closest concentration camp. They might be sent very far away, and that's part of the arduousness of this journey. Is part of the process, is trying to destroy the hope within these people, destroy everything about them, so that they become more docile and more easy to control. Right? The people, even the Jewish people who were being sent, they were told the same as the general public, that they were being sent to these camps in order to work, in order to. They knew what the Nazis taught them. They knew that the Nazis believed that they were a bad influence, and they knew that they were told that they were being sent here to work. Now, at the beginning, some may have believed this to be true. After a few years, though, as you see more and more of your family, your friends, everyone you know being sent off and never coming back, and stories do leak out about what these camps are all about, the Jewish people don't fall for this lie. They are aware. A lot of the time, they know a lot of what's going on, particularly the adults. They are aware, of what could face them at these camps, okay? But there is always that idea that, okay, maybe we will survive, maybe we will be okay. The extent to which the extermination was happening, which we'll learn about later on, was not truly known. And the conditions within the camps really were so atrocious that it's hard. I don't think anyone could possibly really have believed it from a story without having the evidence. People would have, while they would have known the camps were not great, were not nice places, and they may have been afraid of the levels of people not returning from them, the ideas of what was actually happening was not known. So people were transported on these huge trains for days at times until they finally arrived at the camps. Once they arrived at the camps, it became very, very violent, very quick, and very, very rushed. And this was to induce, it was almost a sense of controlled panic. So while the Nazi guards would have been in control, and they knew what they were doing, and they organised what was going to happen, they created panic amongst the people who were arriving at the camps. Generally what would happen is the doors, people who've been sitting in complete darkness for days on end, not being able to move, the doors will be flung open, and guards with gun pointed with dogs will be screaming at the people to get out and to move and to run and to get into the camps. Schnell, the word for speed or fast in German, would have been shouted at these people. The people were then rushed off, just causing chaos. People being separated from their loved ones, having no chance to get back to them, and people being forced into different queues, essentially. As they were processed, as they were being forced into narrower queues, they were passed by doctors who were working for the camps. And the primary function of these doctors, they would be observing the people as they moved, and anyone who was deemed unfit, or people who would not be able to work, and particularly in the concentration camps. We'll talk about concentration versus extermination camps in a few minutes. People who are deemed that they're not going to be able to be any contribute to the camp, to any of the work going on, were immediately separated out. Okay? And the reason for the separation was that these people, as they were deemed they would not be able to work, were sent immediately to gas chambers to be murdered. These people were immediately deemed, you're not going to be useful. Then remember, they were deemed as being lesser than human, and so they were basically just exterminated immediately. They were killed on the spot as soon as they arrived at the camps. Okay. Now, obviously, all camps are slightly different. A lot of what I'm discussing here is based on the events of Auschwitz. But these doctors, these people who have, taken oaths to protect people, are now using their medical knowledge to decide who's going to be killed straight away. Now, usually when these people were separated out, what they were told is they were being taken to be showered and be taken care of so that they would be more useful to the working, and this is what their families were told. So when you got to these places and your elderly relative was moved away and you were told, okay, this person is being taken and we're going to give them a shower and we're going to make them, ready to work, then they'll be taken off. In people's minds, humans have a capacity to hope, and some part of people's minds may have tried to believe that. Now, obviously, people don't return, and after a few days, people, of course, start to figure out what's going on and what's happened, but the people who have figured it out are now already in the camp. For those who were deemed, to be possibly useful, who have the capacity to work, they were marched into the camps, and many of the camps over the gates would have this phrase, Arbeit macht frei. Again, pronunciation probably very bad, but essentially what it means is work will set you free. And this is setting up in people the hope that they can be freed from these camps. These camps are not perhaps the definite end, that if they work hard, and this is what they were told, if you work hard, you become a better person and we'll set you free. Now, this was not the truth. This is a control mechanism. You give people the idea that maybe they will be able to be freed, and they are less likely to totally riot. If you take all hope away from people, then you create very unpredictable people. Right, so all of this is established to try. All these lies are there to try as a control mechanism. Right, obviously the people who didn't come back, then who have been separated out, don't come back, and this becomes a common theme. As life in the camp goes on, people will be regularly taken away and told that they're being given a shower and brought to the gas chambers to be exterminated en masse. Okay, so this is a function of life. Usually what the rest of people are told will be, oh, they've just been moved to a different part of the camp, they're living there now, that's why you're not seeing them anymore. But of course, people are not stupid, and they do start to figure out what's going on, that these people are, what the reality of their situation. Right? Concentration camps here are, we've said people were being lied to in terms of being told they're brought to be put to work. There was an element of work going on in concentration camps, depending on the camp and the area, depends on the work. Always very difficult work, always very long hours, always very much treated without any respect, but there was work going on. Now, the concentration camps still had murder happening in them, and the conditions within there, the disease was usually rampant. People, these stories of extreme cruelty from guards are quite regular to be heard. The life in here was extremely, extremely cruel. Okay, so task 2 is to answer these questions and submit those questions to me on Teams. So you might want to pause here, just we're about a bit over halfway through, just to kind of reflect on what we've talked about so far. Again, I'm giving a very general overview here. So once we get to the camps, we have a few different types of camps. Now we'll talk about later events in later on. We'll talk about what about liberation and different things like that. This video is mainly just about understanding the getting to the camps and the mechanisms in place in the camps. Once people get to the camps, so if you're going to a concentration camp, you might go along the ways of what we talked about. You could be put to work, and you might live quite a while. Right? Some people did live for years in the camps, okay, under terrible, horrible conditions. Right? But in concentration camps, people sometimes did live for a long period, especially if they were able to work very, very hard and they were able to keep going, and they were very, very lucky. Okay? There's a huge amount of luck involved in this. Extermination camps are somewhat different. People didn't survive long times in extermination camps. Now, extermination camps are slightly different to concentration camps in that generally they don't have the aspect of working. Okay, they will have a small amount of work, but the primary function is to kill. That is what they are there for. To the extent that one extermination camp called Treblinka, the average life expectancy of a person upon arriving at Treblinka, to my knowledge, now I could be slightly off on this, but it's about 12 hours. That's how long you survive Treblinka. You get off the train and you were pretty much killed almost instantly. Okay, the concentration camps, people could live for long times. Okay, that is not to say that what happened in any way to say that what happened in the concentration camp is less severe or is less terrible. It is absolutely horrific what happened in these camps, but some people did survive in the concentration camps. Extermination camps, people didn't really. The most famous of these camps, of course, is Auschwitz. Auschwitz is an example of both of these camps. Okay, there was both concentration and work happening within there. It is also a mass extermination camp. Right. So the final solution is being put into place here, and the Jewish people are being exterminated by the Nazis on huge levels. Okay, within the few years that this is happening, so really starting in the late 1930s, it's really over the course of the 1940s, the few years of the 1940s, up to 6 million Jews are exterminated in these camps, are murdered by the Nazis, with another 4 million people from other backgrounds on top of this. Okay, so the Germans find basically an incredibly efficient way of killing people. Right, it is said that basically, the majority of these people are killed in the gas chambers. Not all. Some people are killed by simply being shot. A lot of people die from starvation, from disease, from the terrible conditions they are living in. But huge, huge numbers. The main extermination mechanism is the gas chamber. That's the main tool being used by the Nazis to kill people. When people are brought into the gas chambers, they're obviously told to take off their clothes before they go in because they're going to have a shower. They are all brought in together, and then a small hatch above the chamber would be opened, and a chemical called Cyclone B would be basically dropped into the chamber, and within a few minutes this gas would release and kill all of the people within the shower area. When this has happened, now the Nazis themselves usually don't want to have to be the ones to deal with this. It's a horrific task to have to try and to then go in and take these bodies out. And usually what they had was a small group of Jewish prisoners who were kept separate from the rest of the camp at all times, and their job was to go in to the bodies afterwards. They would extract any gold, so often gold fillings in the teeth would be extracted to be kept and be used as money, to be used towards the German economy. The bodies would then be dragged out, and usually the bodies would be burned. And outside of the gas chambers there will be courtyards that will be filled with dead bodies waiting to be burned. They would then be brought into crematoria. It takes a long time for a human body to burn. So there's a lot of process involved in it. It takes quite a while. The bodies are burnt en masse, and the stench from the burning bodies is simply released into the air. And this stench is something that comes up very regularly when we hear accounts of people living in the camps. The smell of what was coming, okay, and the slow realization for most people of what that smell was, what they were smelling. They were smelling their friends and neighbors and the people they knew being burned. A lot of people question then there was towns near these camps. Okay, generally they were towns for families of the soldiers working in them, but there were just normal towns as well and villages fairly near to the camps. And people often question, did the German populace know, especially the ones living near the camps, know what was going on? Right? And one of the pieces of evidence that would be used to say that they definitely should have known, or they definitely should have had some idea, was this idea of this burning body, this stench that was coming. Right? But we have to remember the extremeness of where these people are living, that and the willing blindness that they've been told that these camps are for these terrible people, and they've been led to believe that these Jewish people are lesser than human. And so there is a lot of people who claim that they were just simply blinded by the brainwashing and mind control used by the Nazis and the propaganda, that they simply didn't think about the camps and they simply ignored them. But there is, it is hard to believe that the people thought anything good was happening in these places. They couldn't possibly, there isn't. They definitely knew something wrong was going on there. The extent to what happened, though, seems to have shocked everyone. Okay, other than the Nazi leaders, the extent to what happened, the extremeness and the numbers and the huge organization of this mass extermination was incredibly shocking. Right, so this video has just been, a brief overview of the basics of what was happening. I'm just trying to get you to understand the concept of what was going on. Okay, so we haven't gone into details of any specific camp here. Okay, we're not going, and this is just a time issue for us. What I want you to do now is just answer these 3 questions on the board. This is task 3. So both task 2 and task 3 today need to be submitted to me on Teams, please, just to show that you have a good understanding of what we've gone through. Again, more details about all of this are in the booklet, so I do encourage you to read through that booklet. Alright, thanks guys.